Hello, and welcome to Hanratty on Karate, and continuing our conversations and little memories of different courses, camps, gashikus, whatever you want to call them. So last time I talked a little bit about Crystal Palace, which is one of the most amazing places ever to go train karate. The amount of people that were there, the energy, the spirit, and the techniques you got to pick up with the amazing instructors that showed up there to teach. I often think it was like a Vegas venue for karate instructors to go to Crystal Palace and train with Anoida Sensei and all of these people, Kasei, Shirai, even at Nakayama, Osaka. Just anybody you could think of who was a name in the JKA at that time came to Crystal Palace and as a guest instructor. We had people come to Crystal Palace from all over the world, as well as the English people who came, and they came from all over the UK. We had Scottish people, and at that time the KUGB was pretty much a Great Britain team, but they had the different regions, if you like. And so I got to train with people from the southern region. In fact, I did a couple of referee courses early in the 70s with Mick Dewey, Jerry Breeze. I'm not sure if Dave Hazard was there, but he was a southern region rep anyway. So he was at Crystal Palace training. All amazing people. Dave always amazed me with his kime and his fierceness and competition and stuff like that. A lot of them broke off from the KUGB over the years, but that's just the way karate is. So I remember one year there was a team there from Dubai, and they were with the Dubai police force or something similar, whatever they have for a police force. I think there was 6 of them. Now, they didn't stay in the residence. They rolled up every day in big limousines and got dropped off. Apparently, they were staying at some 5-star hotel in London. So we never got a chance to talk to them. But the day before the Nationals, they had a friendly, if you like, an international exhibition match between the Dubai team and the English team. Unfortunately, one of the Dubai team had broken his arm. I don't know what he was doing because I never seen them really putting themselves out, during the course. But they did train, and they were all big lads. I mean, they were all 6 foot something. So they're obviously security guards or, maybe just elite police force, I don't know. Anyway, one of them broke his arm and he couldn't really go. So they said, we've only got 4, but we'll fight 4. And Andy Sherry at the time said, oh no, we'll give you one of our guys. And you can guess who they gave them, me. So you got a line of 6 foot odd policemen from Dubai, and then was me on the back. I was the anchor. And then on the English team, we had a really good set of lads. And the last fighter, the guy I ended up fighting, was my mate, Andy Holmes. Andy comes from Southport, a Stevie Cattle Club. In fact, Andy ended up in Canada, and how he ended up was kind of funny. He was down in the States. I had known Andy from Liverpool. He was a baby Bobby. That's a baby policeman, like a police cadet, and then he went on the beat, not for long, around Great Howard Street, around Stevie Cattle's Club, where he trained a lot. He didn't train at the Triangle, and he trained at Terry O'Neill's Club Samurai on Victoria Street in Liverpool. But anyway, Andy ended up in Canada, and how he ended up is he applied for a landed immigrant status, and you had to have a job, and the job had to be something that a Canadian couldn't do. So when I came over to Canada, there was a deathly shortage of mechanics and hydraulics people, so I got a company, sponsored me over, gave me a job and everything else. It wasn't like it is now. You had to show that you had enough money to buy a house, that you had a job, you were secure, and, the company that sponsored you had to write all sorts of guarantees. And that was what it was like when I came over. So Mike Scales phoned me. He was another guy from the Southport Karate Club. Him and Andy had been lifeguards at the Southport pool together years ago. And Mike said, we got to get Andy into Canada so, we can all train together. Well, of course, we couldn't train together. They live about 1,200 miles from me. But I said, yeah, okay. So what we did was we wrote a job description down that absolutely nobody else could fill. Had to be a 3rd dan in Shotokan Karate. Had to have, I think Andy had a degree from Sheffield University at the time. He'd been training with Asano of Kanazawa's group, SKIF. So He was really, really good at karate, good karate man, tall, and very, very flexible, extremely flexible. So when he first started karate, they had to do exercises to kind of firm him up. He kind of like dropping a bowl of jelly on the floor. He was that flexible, which is kind of like Frank Brennan, but, Frank Brennan got a ton of power with it. And he didn't, and so they had to do all these exercises. Anyway, we wrote the thing out so well that he got his visa into Canada and eventually became a Canadian citizen. And if you want to look up Andy now, he's running a bed and breakfast place down in Mexico. It's a little boutique hotel. It's a bit more than a bed and breakfast. So he did very well. But going back to Crystal Palace, these Dubai policemen did the exhibition fight, and it ended up 2-2. And then me and Andy come up for the fight. I was supposed to be from Dubai, but everybody knew I wasn't. I was the only Dubai guy there with a Scouse accent. Anyway, we kind of messed around. Andy scored a wazari on me. I bounced around, got inside, scored a wazari on him, and finished up tie all round. So, it was a draw all round. Everyone was happy. But I thought I'd get some recognition as being a member of the Dubai team, but they just all got in the big limos and buggered off and never said a word. So there you go. So that was towards the last camp or so that I did. I think I did maybe a couple more at Crystal Palace. And then I moved over to Canada in 1980. Now, I was always older. I didn't start my karate till I was 25. So I was 35 when I moved to Canada. And mainly it was because of Maggie Thatcher and all the crap that she was putting out. And it's kind of similar to the way the world's going now. I always knew she was going to do something crazy, and of course after I'd left she did. She declared war on the Falklands, which is a rock 10,000 miles away in the middle of the Atlantic. Nobody wants, but, she decided to go to war on it just to take attention from what she was doing back home, I guess. And she wrecked the mines, and she wrecked the steel industry, and she put lots of people out of work. When I left, there was almost 60% unemployment around Merseyside. They'd closed British Leyland factory and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, I managed to get sponsorship and a job in Canada, in Calgary. Came over here, found out that there was zero karate. Well, there was some karate, but it was absolute rubbish. And they wanted me to teach them more than anything else. And I just wanted somewhere to train and, pick up. So I talked to Sensei Hanratty, sent him a letter, and he replied back and he said, the best thing you can do is train with Nishiyama Sensei. So I'm looking, I'm going, well, Nishiyama Sensei's in Los Angeles and I'm in Calgary. And I remember Hanratty saying, well, it's not very far. I looked at the map and it's not very far. Yeah, I was kind of like when Andy and Frank came over here to visit me, Frank Brennan and Andy Sherry. And they said, can we drive to the mountains? Because we were doing a camp here and a camp in Vancouver. And I said, well, yeah, you can. And I don't think they realized how far it was. So 2 days later, we got to Vancouver. Anyway, another story. So I looked up Nishiyama, sent him a letter. We didn't have email in those days. And asked if I could come down and train. And he said, anytime. And he said, we have a camp at La Jolla down by San Diego. And you're very welcome to attend there and get an idea of what we're about. So I did. That summer, did my first La Jolla camp. And to see how green I was, I flew down to San Diego, grabbed a taxi, and I tell the taxi driver, La Jolla, because that's the way it's spelt, right? Not being a Spanish speaker. And he just started laughing. In those days, we didn't have credit cards, played everything with American Express checks. And so anyway, I got to the camp and I met Vern Vaden. Vern Vaden ran the camps for Nishiyama Sensei at that time. And it was in the college at USC, California, La Jolla, which is one of the main campuses there, right opposite the Tiger Woods golf course. And only about 5 minutes from the beach. Absolutely amazing place, just beautiful. Sunshine all day, massive big gymnasium, great cafeteria, and we all got little apartments. But they were spread out. They weren't high-rise apartments like we had in Crystal Palace. So first camp I was there, didn't know anybody. I just wanted to, get going on my own. So introduced myself around to a few people, got training there, and just loved it. It was absolutely amazing. I thought Nishiyama was one of the best technical teachers I'd ever come across. And every camp he also ran an instructor's course. This was like you do an early morning session on the beach. then you'd have breakfast, then you'd do a morning session, then there'd be a 2 to 3 hour break, and then you'd do an afternoon session. In the 2 to 3 hour break, we did the instructor's course, which was just amazing, the stuff that come across. He had a little handbook that he gave out, which wasn't bad. It was okay, but if you've ever bought Nishiyama's book, Karate, with him and Richard Brown wrote it, it's really informative, and it just gives you a lot. It gives you a lot of background, and just the way the guy thinks ahead of, most people that are teaching. And Nishiyama, of course, has an amazing history and lineage. He was one of the foremen originally of the JKA. Actually, it was his father who wrote up the constitution for it, because he was a lawyer. He started the JKA instructor's course, and he used to teach it every day. Instructors passed through the instructor's course. He would be in the class with the students, doing it every day. Now, he also started the same instructor's course at his own dojo on Wilshire in LA, and he followed more or less the same pattern. And amazingly, there was a number of American instructors that went through that course from the old American team, the ITKF team. He actually started his own organization as well, which is ITKF, International Traditional Karate Federation. He was still a member of the JKA at that time when I was there anyway, because I got a couple of downgrade certificates from him from JKA. But politics came in, as they always do. But anyway, he did his own instructor's course. And I remember talking to Ray Dalkey. We became very good friends with Ray Dalkey, a member of that Nishiyama team. And he was telling me they had to show up at 9 o'clock every morning in shirt and tie, blazer. And if you didn't get there at 9, the door was locked. It's kind of like the old triangle at Andy Sherry. You got in there before 6. And if you got in there after 6, you just didn't get in because the door was locked. The place was full. So there used to be people standing on the stairs trying to look through the window. But Nishiyama ran his own course, and it was extensive. And from what I can gather, the weekly or monthly reports that the guys on the course had to put in provided a lot of the basis for the book that he and Richard Brown put together. So it's like a two-way street. If you're a professor in a university and your students are doing research, usually it's the professor that gets the credit, unless he wants to share the honours with the student. But mostly it's the professor that gets the credit. And that was the same thing, according to Ray Dalkey, and I got no reason to disbelieve Ray. Going back to the camp, it was a fantastic camp. The food was amazing. The people were great. You did get the occasional wimp, I've got to say, more in that camp than you did at Crystal Palace. The first time I did kumite with an American guy, he was so shocked because I hit him. Well, I didn't really hit him. If I hit him, I would have knocked him out, but I touched him. And he's like, "Oh, you touched my face, that's not allowed, that's certainly not allowed," and all this. And I go, get a grip, But I would say that the majority of the time, they were really good people, tough lads, a lot of them. And we used to get a lot of people from Brazil, Mexico, Hawaii. A bunch of guys come down from Quebec every year as well, which is the other side of Canada. It's further away from me than LA is. That's how big Canada is. It was great, and a couple of times Andy Holmes showed up about 82, 83, I think, because he'd been living down in LA with these other guys before we'd got him into Canada. So we had a good bunch of mates there. So all through the 80s, I did the instructor's course with Nishiyama, and I trained every year with him, as well as bringing him into Calgary for seminars and going down to his dojo whenever I could. Talking about the camps, I think for me, and I was maybe Nidan at the time when I first started going down, it really taught me a lot. I couldn't believe how much it taught me. And I ended up taking Sandan and Yondan with Nishiyama. I was kind of proud of that. Just amazing camps. I met amazing people, very friendly, most American people at that time. And Southern California is a fantastic place to visit. And I hope that place sorts itself out and people start going back to the States again. And because it genuinely is a wonderful country. It doesn't have so many wonderful inhabitants now as it did then. But I'm sure it'll sort itself out. As I say, the camps that I did down in La Jolla were absolutely brilliant. And we had so many instructors. Anoida used to come down, so we'd get together a lot, just little chats here and there and everywhere, and it was really good. Except for one time, there was, and I have to say this, I think it was about 86, 87, and Anoida come down. We'd have some political problems here in Canada. They show up everywhere, but apparently there was somebody in Canada thought they should be in charge of JKA Canada, and they didn't like all these English guys coming over. And we were nearly all ex-KUGB, so we were pretty hard guys. We were teaching our stuff and training our students and having a great deal of success. I mean, I produced quite a few Canadian national champions, and I took the first senior national champion in 90, 91 and 92. So I was Canadian senior national champion 3 times. I also got the Coach of the Year, which was the first time it was awarded in 89, I think it was. And I was awarded and nominated for Canada Sportsman of the Year, because you're not going to get that when you've got the likes of Olympic runners and swimmers and all that. But anyway, there was a complaint put in that we were just being a bit too hard on students, and these political people didn't like it. One thing about Nishiyama, amazing karate man, I'll never say anything against him. His technique, his way of teaching, his way of putting stuff across was fantastic, but he was extremely political. And of course, he ended up breaking away from just about everybody. But his big enemy was what was WUKO at the time. It's WKF now. And he didn't like the sport karate stuff at all. He wanted to go more for Budo karate and stick to the old JKA Shobuippon rules, which I like and I still use in my competitions. So he was definitely against that, and there was a big row because they were trying to get karate into the Olympics. And he said that, you got to recognize the Budo style, the Shobuippon style, as well as the WKF, or the WUKO style. But the WUKO style had a lot more money behind it. Sasakawa then, who was a little bit of a Yakuza money man, and he pumped money into the WUKO no end, and so they got the influence. But as far as the training goes, you couldn't fault it. So kind of a bit of a political background. In Canada, they originally started off with Shobuippon, and they started to ease over towards the, I don't know what they use now, 8-point system or Shobu Sanpon or whatever. They had guys come teach courses, guys like George Anderson and people like this, who were basically in it for the political affiliations. So anyway, this political thing, somebody had wrote a letter to Nishiyama and complained about us. So Anoida was there and Nishiyama, and they pulled us in to one of the rooms. Actually, it was me and Andy Holmes. Actually, I think we were the only Canadian guys there at the time. Canadian, British guys. Anyway, Nishiyama had obviously told Anoida to give us shit, which he did. On the end of a Anoida rollicking, then you've been told off. Now, that night, we were actually going for our yondans, me and Andy. And we give you an idea of the grading at La Jolla camp there. They had 3 tables, and each table there was 3 Japanese instructors. That's how many instructors they had. I've got a picture of all the instructors there. There's Shirai, Kasei, Anoida, just anybody you could think of. Anyway, the first table, which Shirai was in charge of, we did our kata. Now, there were so many people grading, it started at 8 o'clock at night. So Andy and I got up for our grading at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we were still feeling the effects of Anoida yelling at us that day about don't try to take over Canada and don't try to say that you're JKA and this is the way it should be. And all we were doing was kind of putting across the kind of teaching that we'd had from him. So it was really bewildering to us and quite humiliating. But we went up to do our grading. So I did mine. I actually remember doing Unsu. I think Andy did Nuji Shiho. And then we moved up to the next table to do some Kion or basics. And so the 3 Japanese that were doing the kata panel, they moved up along with the Kion panel. So now there's 6 Japanese sitting at that table, and Kasei was in charge of that table. So we did our Kion. Then we moved up to the final table, and there's 11 of them, with Nishiyama as the head on that table. And by that time, I'm like just about losing it. I'm thinking, it doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to get away with it. And so we come up for the first fight, And I was lucky enough to get somebody close to my size, a little Mexican guy, and I just blasted him out the ring with a Maegeri Oisuki combination, took his wind out, punched him right in the head, knocked him out the ring, stood back up. Same thing next fight, swept the guy off his feet, stomped him down. And I was just cheesed off and thinking, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to get this. I'm just not. And he's in the same mood, and he's got legs like you wouldn't believe. And he trained a lot with Terry O'Neill. If you train with Terry O'Neill, you're going to be a good kicker. So Andy just beats the snot out of his fights. So all finished. You don't get the results till the next day. So I'm like, oh, man. So we go back to our accommodation, little place. I threw my belt on the bed. Andy throws in and he says, I don't know about you, John, but I'm ready to pack in. I said, it doesn't look like there's much point in going on. We're not going to get any further with, all these politics and people snitching on us and stuff like that. He agreed. And then there was a little knock on the door, and we're still sitting there in soaking wet geese, no belts on. And a Japanese guy comes in, Yasu Sakurai, and he was a good karate man. And he come in, puts a 6-pack of beer down on the table and goes, best grading I ever saw. Oh, a few beers later, we didn't care. So that was good. And we did pass, but unfortunately, Nishiyama never sent the certificates. And he was one of those times you pay your money, and it wasn't cheap, $400 or $500 for a Yondan then. You paid your money, and then you waited to get your certificate back from Japan, which I had with all my others. So it never showed. So the next time we brought Nishiyama up to Vancouver, we asked him, well, what about the certificates? He says, I don't think Heiko, which was his secretary in California, and I've known Heiko a lot. She, hello, Sensei wants to have coffee with you and all that. We know she got the check because we had the cancelled checks back. And he said, I don't think she got them and all that. Well, you don't want to argue with an 8-dan JKA. Just the respectability was there, but it just got a bit too much. And eventually there was like 30 or 40 people in Canada that just weren't getting their certificates after gradings with Nishiyama. And that's basically when we decided to call it a day. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now, but the Hoya camp was amazing. I miss it to this day. But unfortunately, politics gets in the way. But it was a fantastic venue. You met amazing amount of people. I'll never forget training on the beach. And you get people coming from all over. I can remember Malcolm and Shane Dorfman coming. Shane was only like 10 at the time. Great kid. Still friends with Malcolm and Shane. It was amazing just to watch the people that came to those camps. And you learned from everybody. You learned from the guy next to you. You learned from the guy down there. You mixed up. You got in and, you went to do kumite with whoever you could. Or, you did kata against whoever you could. You picked up different things, I like the way the guy does that in kata. Oh, wow, that's great timing. That's different than what I do. And these are the things that you pick up. And just the way somebody picks up a technique is amazing. The way they do the technique and you go, I'm going to try that. And away you go. So you bring all this stuff back to your own dojo and you practice it and you practice different ways of doing it. It's amazing how many times your eyes are opened or the little light bulb goes on and you think, that was great. I'm going to do it like that. And I miss those camps. I really miss them. But during the 80s, I did start a camp of my own up in the mountains here in Banff. Calgary's only an hour and a half maybe from Banff. So we managed to get a government campsite. So they have campsites in Banff National Park in the mountains. It's quite high. Where we camped was just past, you might not know the area, but there's some wonderful places around Banff. One of them is Johnson's Canyon, but the river comes down through the canyon in the mountains and stuff. So just past Johnson's Canyon, there's a place called Johnson Meadows, and it's opposite an old mining town called Silver City. It's not there now, but the remains of it. But it had been flattened, so the woods weren't there. So it had all been flattened, and so you had fields. National Park land belongs to the federal government, and what they did was they wouldn't allow cars into these campsites. There's special campsites if you want to take, your caravan trailer or whatever you've got, motorhome. But these were campsites that only allowed to walk in. So you parked your car in a car park and then you walked in about 3 or 4 kilometres and then you got this big clearing and you had like a very primitive cookhouse thing and everybody lived in tents. That to me was camping. And so I started a camp there, and it was successful. I was teaching there at 82, I think. I ran it for 25 years until I couldn't stand sleeping on the ground anymore, but I got some great pictures and some great memories of those camps. And sometimes you'd wake up to bright sunshine, 25, 30 degrees. Sometimes you'd wake up to snow. It was tough. But then the wonderful thing about the mountains close to Calgary and around, different mountains, we have these amazing hot springs come up out the ground, and Banff has got a very famous hot springs. And then after the camp, we'd all head to the hot springs and see if we could wash the soot and the muck off. It was just a great time. Always remember that. So maybe I'll do a bit more on that on the next podcast. Take care. Bye for now. And if I met you at a camp or anything like that in the 80s, say hi, or any comments, questions, queries. Talk to you again later.